satisfaction either, but our Olympic gold medalist in box pen, the Searle.
Got our scraps of paper. We're going to have a video afterwards. We'll have a video afterwards. I think you're probably right about the nerves that it's a bit harder than when you go on. I think what we felt we're trying to do is, rather than say, what the race was like or whatever, how to win a gold medal, like, is a bit of a difficult question on how they've gone as well. I think what we felt we're trying to do was give you what we think is the three things you need, if you like, the three bits you have to get right to perform well at anything. It doesn't matter if it's Henley, Olympics, whatever it is. The three sides that we think are right and how we approach them. There's different ways to do that. The balance may be different amongst these three things, but you need to get enough of each one and an overall score, if you like, that's high enough to win. Greg's going to talk you through what we feel about physiology, obviously. It's very important. The technical side of it, and hopefully I'm going to talk about the mental approach, if you like. I think you need those three things, and it's easy. Greg's going to start off with physiology.
Right, so I feel a bit happy standing up. I'm talking about, as Jonny says, about physiology, which is really one of the important parts of achieving success at rowing. But we want to stress that we don't think it's the most or the main factor. It's one of many factors, or one of these three factors. And what we're going to do really is talk you through it and tell you what we think and what we've done and what works for us. But there's no way that what we think would necessarily work for everybody, and other people do their training their way and they achieve success with it. As far as physiology goes, within certain limits, to be good at a high level of rowing, anyone can really improve their physiology and can reach a high standard. The limits being basically you've got to be over about 6 foot tall, and then if you go out and you train, and you go out and you train every day and you do your 20 Ks every day, and you can get fitter and you can get stronger. And that's an easy thing to do if you've got time to do it. There's lots of knowledge about it. I'm sure you've heard about it all weekend, and that's something which lots of people do. What we did was that we didn't take physiology as a main emphasis of our training, and we think that this for us would have been a dangerous thing to do. We listened to all the advice which was being given to us, particularly the British programme that was being set, and we decided that we weren't going to ignore it, but that we weren't either going to do it word for word. For a few reasons. One was that it was too time consuming for us, because we were both studying and we just didn't have the time to put in that sort of training. We thought it was a bit too inflexible, and we also thought it wasn't quite as interesting as it might have been, and that wasn't what we wanted to do. We wanted to make sure the most important thing was going fast and enjoying ourselves doing that. So we didn't do the standard programme. And so we were in with the group at Molesey, which consisted of about 8 or 10 athletes. And we each worked out what we were going to do. And we didn't mind what other people did. Some people were happy to do, let's say, 8 training sessions a week through the winter, and that was enough for them to improve as they wanted to. We were probably doing about 12 sessions a week in the winter. And these consisted of some steady state, which was, as we grew, the advice was that it should be low intensity and we shouldn't get too excited about it. And we should just go out and do the 20k, the 12 miles, what we call it. And we even came down to having to agree, when we were out in our sculling boats in the winter, agree which one of us was actually going to win each leg. Because otherwise we'd just end up being on our knees after each session. But we didn't go overboard on that. We did some of that. And then once a week we do a 20k ergo, because this was being bandied about as a good thing to do. We would do this basically not just for the physiological benefit, but also to gain the psychological benefit. and we go in and we put the two ergos side by side so we could both see each other's score.
I'd take 2 minutes start.
Jonny would get a bit of a start, and then we'd sit there and we'd bang our heads together for 70 minutes. And we'd only do that completely flat out, basically as hard as we could. And for the last 10 minutes of that, we were absolutely hanging on. And we'd fall off and, we'd roll around the floor and be sick or whatever was necessary. And we thought that was an important part of our training. And for that last 10 minutes of sitting on the ergo, it was incredibly painful, but it makes a 7-minute race in the Cox Pair seem quite short. And then when we were on the water, we spent most of the winter sculling. This was for a few reasons. It was easy because we didn't have that much, as I said, we didn't have that much time. We could go out when we needed to. We could both go out on our own and scull. We thought it was useful in building up our strength, and from a technical point of view, we could both, and from a training benefit point of view, we could both take complete responsibility for our own actions. If our boat didn't go fast, we couldn't blame the other one, which, being brothers, could end up being a bit of a problem. So we sculled for most of the winter, which I think was a useful thing to do. And the basic idea was that we were going to work on our weaknesses. We knew what we weren't good at, and we were going to work on that. And we weren't just going to do the laid out thing, which was what that lot added up to. As far as altitude training goes, I think we're both still in two minds, really. We don't know. I don't think you should necessarily, I wouldn't spend all the money to go out to altitude if you haven't got all that much. It certainly does get a bit cold and miserable. The rest of the, on finally summing up the physiological sort of bit, I think for the rest of the team, they wouldn't say that physiology was their main problem and that fitness wasn't a stumbling block this year. And now I'm going to talk about technique and the technical side, which for us was a main focus. Each time we'd go out and we'd do an outing, we'd be focused on something technical. And the idea was, by going out and doing the miles, we'd pick up the physiology along the way. But as I said, I don't think it's dangerous to go out and just think of physiology. So on the technique side, basically, even big people can learn to row properly. And the small ones aren't always perfect either. And no one is uncoachable. No one's ever too big because he's a big bloke. He might as well row short because he's big. I don't think that's a very valid argument. Anyone can be coached. No one's too big, and also no one's too good to be coached. We went out and we tried to improve our faults in the winter with the sculling. And as I say, get fit and strong at the same time. Every outing we think about technique. And I think it was when we went on the Easter training camp with the rest of the team, we all went away and we got together and got all the groups together. And we noticed rowing in fours with other people that when we rowed, our main focus was on good rowing and maximum quality rowing of what we were aiming at. I think a lot of other people had started thinking about having a comfy row, and their main worry was about balance and being comfortable while they did their 20k. And we spent the time in our 20k thinking about rowing better each stroke. We were lucky to be coached by Steve Gunn this year, who we thought was the best coach for us, one of the best technical coaches around. Unfortunately, he wasn't allowed to coach us in much of the winter, but by winning the trial, we were finally allowed to have the coach who we wanted. He gave us the opinion that there were only better strokes or worse strokes. So when we were out rowing, we never rowed the same stroke twice. You either tried to row a better one, you always tried to row a better one. And you wouldn't just row along ingrained bad technique, you take a better stroke next time. Each time we think about that. And take every stroke individually was an opportunity to go fast, which is why we did do them shorter, more intense things, where we really focused in on each stroke of the outing. And that's more or less my summing up of those two things, and I hand you over to Jonny, who's going to talk about the mental approach which we took through the year.
I mean, hopefully Greg sort of explained, if you like, how you need to be strong, you need to be fit to a certain level. You then need to make sure you've got the technique, to make sure you're not actually stopping the boat. You know? There's no point being big and strong, and then stopping the boat as well. But I think probably principally the thing that turns you from being a good boat mover into being a race winner is the mental side and how you approach them. That there are people around who can go fast in a long distance trial in the winter, where there's no pressure on. But it's making sure that when the big race comes, that you perform on the day. At the end of the year, people are judged like on how they do at the World Championships, or I presume at whatever level it is, you know, how you do at Henley, whatever your main focus is in the year. And it doesn't matter whether you win every race up till that and then lose there. How you're going to judge yourself is how you did in the one you wanted to do well in. So with that in mind, I think I felt I was probably trying to say the three parts within that. I mean, I think it's such a wide area, it's very hard to say that. I think initially you need to dream, if you like. You need to aim for the top. You need to want to win the Olympic gold medal, whatever it is, the highest you can think. For me, that was watching Martin Cross, and obviously Steve. I didn't know him at the time. Martin was teaching at my school when I was at Hampton in 1984. Seeing him standing on the rostrum with the Lake Casitas, I'm sure everyone knows the video. That drove me on, if you like. That's 1984, in my second year of rowing. That was always with me. That picture, if you like, that maybe one day it would be me who was standing. So it really was a dream, if you like. When you're 14 years old, you can't know that maybe that will be you one day. As time went on, and I carried on rowing at Hampton, it became apparent that I was doing well. I was lucky. I said Steve Gunn was coaching there, Hampton. It was not for me here, but obviously we're the best school for about 5 years. And we were doing well. I did well at the juniors, and it became it was a bit less of a dream, and it became a bit more realistic. I had world medals at the start of this year. Greg and I think realised we had similar ambitions, if you like. That we had this dream, the gold medal, not a silver or a medal, or it was a gold we wanted, and we got in the pair. And well, we didn't. That story. We got in sculls. We had a view to do the pair at the Olympics to try and achieve this dream, if you like. I spent the winter visualising stupid things. To confess, every time we were out rowing, I picture myself rowing away from Stephen Mackie. This was obviously a bit of a dream. I was beating Langer on the bench pull World Championships, or beating the Germans by clear water in my leg press, whatever it was. The stupid little images, just all the time. So you've got this dream. I even used to row 5 sets of power cleans against the Abu Nalis. Sounds like something I made up. And we rode them down, in fact, in the last set, so that's quite good. As the year went on, we did quite well. We did well at the trials, and we were selected eventually in the Cox pair. We ended up with Gary, who helped a bit, I think. By the time we'd been in the Coxes for a while, and Greg was probably starting to get a bit fed up with hearing my voice, so I did a bit more than giving the commands. We approached the Olympics. I tried to. Obviously, by then the dream was not just a dream; it was a realistic sort of thing. But what we had to do then was put that into practice, to approach the race, if you like, trying to get that bit right. And I went there, and I tried to think of it as just the World Championships. Tried to take away that it's just the World Championships in a nice place. I didn't want to go to the opening ceremony, not only because it was a few hours away, but I thought, I think that's going to scare me a bit. If you suddenly realise the size of this thing, we tried to bring it right down. Like when we're approaching the race, we spoke to psychologists and tried to bring it into the present tense. Just think about one day at a time. Bring it down to a smaller level than that. One outing at a time, one stroke at a time within that outing kind of thing. Just so you're breaking it down to stuff you can manage. you've got to have the overall dream of a goal, but within that, you break it down to the practicalities of doing it. We spoke with a psychologist before our race, as we were preparing them for them, and he came up with a few sort of phrases to spur us on, if you like. One I give you, which I'm sure you've probably all read a few times, just Searle, psychologist, preparing him. I hope he wasn't with him this time, but it was the phrase, if not now, when? If not me, who? Really, that anyone can achieve a dream. We're all the same, to a certain extent. Just don't be afraid of winning, if you like. Before the final, I remember thinking, I was a bit ill, and I was quite scared. I thought, maybe the Italians will give up next year. Maybe it'll be easy next time. Atlanta's only 4 years, and then I sort of thought, no, that's not right. Why give up now? That's so good book is stuff. If you like. Let's win it now. Again, we're sort of preparing for the race. You're now at the stage where you're trying to put into practice this dream, and it has to come away. The mental approach has to come away from it being a dream. You have to reduce it to what you're actually going to do. And I think then, when the race finally began, we just set out to move our boat. As we pushed off the raft, we had in mind that we'd row our boat from the start to the finish as quick as we possibly could. We obviously couldn't control what the Italians were going to do. We knew it should be between us and them. But you can't slow someone down very easily. You've got some friends on the bank. What we hoped to do was be as distracted by them as little as possible, but within that to use them to spur us to greater things. You can't race 100% focusing your boat, because you're not a racer then. You're just rowing along and doing a piece. And that's the thing, you've got to use the other crew, but you've got to not let them distract you. And we're coming on to now to how you actually approach the race. And I think really once you're in the race, it's too late to change the mental approach. You've just got to do what you've practiced. We practiced a lot of training where we'd finish very strongly. Since I was at Hampton, we always used to race down the cup. It doesn't matter what you finish at, just to practice that in your mind that you always want to win. You want to win. And I think as we went down the course, after you set off from the start and you're trying to move the boat, you're thinking about technique, you're thinking about rhythm or whatever it is. Once the pain hits you and you start losing what's really going on, all that you're racing on is what's inside you and what you feel. And what you know is that you want to get in front of another crew. And that's not something you can teach people to do. They have to learn it themselves. They have to learn how much they want to win. You can't say to someone, you want to go out and you want to win. You've got to give them an opportunity in training and throughout their development to learn to race. They've got to learn themselves, and that's the hardest bit. And you can tell someone how much training to do. You can tell them how to row. It's very hard to tell them to win. They've got to learn that themselves. And I think you need the opportunity in training to inbreed that. We take it to ridiculous extremes. Some might say ridiculous extremes. In training, we practiced. We picked up the German 8 for the last 250 when we were out paddling one day. And they only took a length of us, which we felt was a moral victory. The fact we were at 40 or whatever, and they were paddling light and they didn't know they were racing, it's not. That's sort of thing that, okay, that's one extreme, but you've always got to remember that at the end of the day, you don't win anything by good rowing and by, that's not true. You don't win anything solely by good rowing and by being fit. You win it by wanting to win more than the other people. And that goes up to making sure you're motivated for the winter training. So at the end of the day, it's what happens in the big race that matters. If you like, it's difficult to approach that because you have to reduce it to you can look at it rationally and say, what a stupid thing to do. Why do you want to go and win a race? Why do you want to race up and down? Why do you want to go to training? But we're all here today. You've got to ignore the rational side, if you like. childish if you like it is, it's escapism. We're trying to get back to being little, but wanting to win, and you're told off for wanting to win, but there's nothing wrong with that. At the end of the day, you're not going to beat someone else if you don't want to win more than them. I've probably rambled on a bit. Greg's going to say a few thank yous, and then I'd just like to say...
Yeah, I think we should like to take this opportunity really to thank the coaches who've been involved with us really in the last, well, all coaches who've ever coached us really, and particularly in the last few years. Marty in the 8 last year, and then particularly Steve this year who coached us through. I think we should thank our absent friend Gary, who's certainly put Coxes on the map a bit more than they were before. And we certainly never realised quite how important they were. I think we should thank Ailings, who managed to get our boat ready for us. I don't know if you know that we did have one boat from them, which managed to get broken about a month before the Olympics, and then they put another one together for us in a couple of weeks, which was a first-rate boat, and we obviously haven't got any complaints with it at all. Thank Molesey, particularly the captain Dick and Paul and Jonathan Steele, who've been very supportive to us, and we always end up thanking them. We should thank Hampton for teaching us all we know, and let's give it to Jonny, who's going to sort of conclude with that.
I'd just like to thank everyone for the opportunity to talk here today. On a slightly more serious note, that maybe this isn't the place, but I do feel that I think we should have had a lot more athletes with the opportunity to be here today.